2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Coming out of that projector. Nice. And you got to mute that. How about the other one? Is the other one on, off? Who knows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where else am I hearing my from? What? I'm hearing myself delay somewhere. Oh, yeah, nice. I hear myself delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What? I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ha ha. Welcome, New York and New Jersey listening audience. I want to thank everyone tonight for joining the first yard site. I didn't run a wire there either. Or you did? I ran one there. I didn't run from one to the next. No, I did not connect anything yet. Where did you say that wire is again? You said there was a wire coming over here. To go over there. To go where? It was hanging over the mixer. No, that's going to the camera. No, the one hanging. The one that was hanging over, I just plugged it into number 2. Camera, so the one plugged into here. This is the one going to there. Yeah. Why? 50? 250s. He likes using 50s instead of 100s. I like to use the rolled ones instead of the wheels. And the folded ones. And the folded ones. I feel more 50-foot XLRs just for you, though, Bear. I appreciate it. Turn. Jeder eine, der Sinn um in alle Chayli Yisrael, und alle Beziehers Klal Yisrael. It's a learning Gelegenheit. It's an incredible opportunity. Somebody in Shekinah together being this battle. Just lower the camera to get onto the sign. The Hillen. You have it recorded on the what's his name? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. Very loud.
schedule here?
Well, 7:30. 7:30.
Yeah.
It's my what's his name? The address. We broadcast live on the radio 8 p.m. Let's go for 7:30. The actual program begins at 8 o'clock.
Okay. And how long is the program?
An hour and a half, I think.
You don't have a thin thing here, right?
Then what?
Thin.
Then what?
Paper clip.
Yeah.
It's not a Chabad. This guy's singing. He's not Chabad, is he?
Bobby Pin will do this. Get off on this I try to call myself. He was doing the live This is on the CD or this from the live broadcast?
This is from a recording that I have.
I get the recording of it.
Now Shmayahu, the tip, the
חנון יש פה איך לפניו שיחית שרוצי לפניו להגיד ויסעתי פולי רוחי ואתו יודעתו נסימוסי ויעזו עליך תומנופך לי הבית יומי נורא בית למקיר עובד נויס ממני עדו יש לנפשי זעקתי אליך אדוני אמרתי אתה מחזיק חלקי בעץ החיים ויקשיבו אל רינוסי גדולוי מאוד הצילני מרודפיי כי אומצו ממני הוציאו ממעסקי נפשי להוידוס אשמחו ויחתיו צדיקים כי סגמול אלוהים
Kinderen haben gesagt, tellen mit einem neuen Gesäuers. Eibsch soll helfen, als Eibsch soll nehmen in the Tfilis. We daven so beautifully. The Eibsch should be makabel at Tfilis. We're now going to say Achenukal Beis Yisrael. Besides the Chayli Yisrael mispalel for, wir daven Sinnen oben, alle Zuhers Klal Yisrael sind du in der Welt. Eretz Yisrael in der ganzen Welt. I feel a du zwischen uns, in Zachinach, du Asakuna. We have to be mispalel. For all of Achenu B'nai Yisrael, not just the Cholim, all the Fashidan Tzaras that are here in Klal Yisrael, and here in America, the Chinuch should remain al Taras HaKodesh.
אחינו כל בית ישראל הנשונים בעצור ובשוויון העומדים ביום וביבושו יוצא מצור ויפיל לנו
Okay, guys, that's good. There's no more. There's no lighting over here. There's not much light. There's nothing we can do about it, right? It's very dark on this side. On this side, is there? What's your first name again? Shalom Bear. Yeah, Mizrach, I think is yes. It's gonna be this way. Yeah, but it's gonna be you're gonna daven with the follow your side. I'm definitely gonna want a l'chaim before I start, so if you don't mind, you have great, which is great, or you have a scotch, either one.
Weiß doch sicher, was ich mein zu suchen. Als die Engel von der Muschel mein ich danke alle Jiden. Nicht alle Mulis, also glintet in der Beschäfes Lutzen. Aber fang von starker Wind zu blusen. Man darf sich sehr stark und halten. Weil Leute nicht kennen es dir, sei was da wegfieren. Aber tachlis jeder eine weiß doch es ist sehr schwer. Der Iker ist probieren, der Beschäfer wart nicht aus von mir. Dies probieren, sonst du wissen, du ist der beste Gewinn. Auf viele Chas bei Schulen geht verkehrt. Sie hören dann geschrei, wird eibig Schiva nimmt und eibig nicht kein Chilig wird.
Oi, Tate, weißt, ich bin da, sag ich. Man hat nicht die Ziege will. Nur am Blues, das starke Wind. Yitzircho, Gan Eden Mikedem, Gan Eden Mikedem. Sameach Samach Reim Ho Auvim, Kisamechacho Yitzircho, Gan Eden Mikedem, Gan Eden Mikedem. So ist das, ist es so gelo akoro. So שמח תשמח
Stand line.
לא אהובי כי שמח חוי צירכו יצירכו בגן
Hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. How are you? Good to see you. Bravo, Mel Myers break. Shh. Amen. Amen. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Ved. Amen. 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 Yehi Shmi Rabba Mel Myers break. Amen. Amen. want to speak? When do you want? How long you want to speak for?
Behind it, it's about 5 months.
5 minutes.
Long?
No, that's good. It's 5 minutes is good. I think I'll have you. I think after the. See. I think
In the end of my speech, I go through a bunch of thank yous.
after the student from Tiferes Menachem. And then we're going to go right to Simon Jacobson. Yeah, he was from Tiferes Menachem, one of the scholars from our scholarship program. So,
So then
yes, yeah. Then after you, I'm going to go right to. So then you're going to thank yous and everything, which is beautiful. So that because then you're going to go to Simon because that's a good way of doing that. Because Simon Jacobson is the main speech. That's it too. He's going to speak twice, but the final one, you'll see. It's after the speech from the Tiferes Menachem scholar, you'll speak, and then we go right to Simon Jacobson. That's it. That's it. Yeah. No, he is. Simon is first time's 8 minutes. Simon
Second time
is half an hour. Huh? Yeah. Gotcha. Amen. 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 Sorry I missed your L'chaim, but I'm sure I'm so busy in this. Amen. 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 L'chaim. I'm going to be upbeat for this. I mean, I hope it's appropriate. I'm going to be positive. Rebbe's way is positive. Fine.
Stationers found their old cards.
Right.
Picture of a synagogue, little benches, and the last bench, one person there came early to get the back seat.
When you came early to go.
I say, look, people don't want to come over here.
Yeah, they will. It's going to fill up though. It's going to be a big crowd. Shkoyach Rabbi Will. Yeah. How you change your life, and how grateful you are to the person. Change your life. That's the way I feel. That's the important thing. I say, by the way, that you went to the University of Massachusetts with a BS in civil and environmental engineering, right? Okay, so you're gonna speak. You'll speak probably around 8:30, something like that. You'll see. I'm gonna call you as Aaron Berelowitz.
So what's the general program right now?
Yeah, at 8 o'clock we'll go on the air. Right now, why don't you get something to eat if you want? 8 o'clock we're gonna go on the air. You'll see. We're on the radio for 2 hours. So the main thing is it's not here; it's the radio. We've got 20,000 people.
You need me specifically for when?
Yeah, I've got you right here. You're gonna speak after I talk about his tzedakah. Then Ari, the son, is gonna do a siyum. He's doing a siyum. Then I'm gonna talk about his involvements at tzedakah, and then you're gonna speak as a representative of one of his programs, is the one that he was most involved with, Tiferes Minah.
Okay.
So that's probably about 8:45, 45 minutes, 40 minutes. And then you should speak for 5 minutes, whatever, but speak from the heart. The main thing is you speak from the heart. Don't get tied up in the words. Just say, well, I'm happy that I spent 6 months along in my note, and then came to Hadar Torah, and something about university, and whatever you want to say.
What I wrote to you.
Right, it's fine, but you don't have to. You can ad lib to it, right? The main thing is that they should say, no, you're a successful young Jewish secular kid, or sort of like all of us were, and then we had to expose to Hasidus, and that's what I think. But you can stick to it. But I'm just saying it's better if you just read it. It's not as impressive. It doesn't make as a big impression. I don't mean impressive. I mean impression on people. You want to speak to people as people. All right?
And then after I speak, then you don't need me.
No, you can go. You might find it interesting, the class. There's going to be a class on eternal life in Chaim Tzchim. He's amazing. Rabbi Jacobson is going to be speaking over here. Yeah, right after you. Right after. Right. Okay. Well, okay, so you'll be able to hopefully catch that, right?
Yeah, so if I'm running a few minutes late, it's not the end of the road.
Right. Okay, 1 second. Okay. 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 Yeah.
My father and yourself sent them to yeshiva, no?
Yes. He's speaking.
Who, the guy with the casket? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. It's civil and environmental engineering BS from University of Massachusetts. High honors, UMass at Amherst, and he graduated and came. We have 20 of these guys. It's amazing.
He was in the video, but
yes. Surely one more little vodka.
I get included in the venue? What do you mean? We have some not bad. We have gluten-free label.
If there's anything you want to say, ask me out. Huh? 5 minutes.
If I ever have a problem, I go, oh my god, I can't see if my hair looks good. I can just look. I'm sitting right in front of you.
You're on COL, right?
I know.
Okay, everybody, please get your food. We're going live on the radio in 6 minutes. So, right, 6 minutes. And this is being broadcast on WSNR 620 AM. Approximately 20,000 listeners tonight. So, Shmuel deserves it. And I'm really excited about being able to present Shmuel to the public. Right. And also cell phones, please put on vibrate. And any of the speakers here that are going to speak, please be close to us because we don't want dead air time tonight. Okay, so we're going to start in 5 minutes, exactly 8 o'clock on WSNR. And it's also being live streamed on COL. Enjoy all the food. There's plenty of food. The Finks always do things bar hachava. Baruch Hashem. You sure we're singing in England right now? Huh? Where?
Yeah, it's not live.
It is.
It's like a minute lag. I'll see you what you did now in a minute.
It is. It's gonna be on here, right? yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, 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 ah, yeah, yeah, ah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I want to welcome the New York, New Jersey Talkline Communications Network audience to what should be a very inspiring evening, which is the first yahrzeit of the Chassid Shmuel Yaakov ben Moshe Fink. And I think you'll see throughout the course of the evening that his life is extremely inspiring, and we can take a lot of lessons from it and inspire us. And when we leave tonight after this program, we should hopefully have, as the Rebbe says, with the Histalkus, so the Rebbe said, Chayamushka, that he said that the phrase he used very often is V'chayitena eli boy, that the living shall take it to heart. So this yahrzeit is a time when we should take it to heart and learn from his experience and his family's experience in Tzedakah, and I think we'll all be inspired. So first of all, I want to say l'chaim to everybody, to Shmuel Yaakov ben Moshe in Gan Eden, and we should see you down Lamata Masar Tfachim with the Gula Shlema before this the end of the evening tonight. L'chaim. So Shmuel Yaakov, he was my closest friend for, 15, 20 years. The family was very kind to let me chair the program this evening. We're going to hear tonight from his youngest son, Ari, is going to make a siyum on Masechta Megillah and say Kaddish, of course. And we're going to hear from Simon Jacobson. Rabbi Jacobson's going to join us with technology. The Rebbe says you should use technology for Kedusha. So Simon is on the West Coast. He's speaking live. If people have any questions and answers, and we might be able to deal with them at the end of his main talk, which is on Chaim Nitzchim and Techias HaMesim, two very critical, fundamental aspects of Torah that I'm sure a lot of people, especially in the listening audience, the radio listening audience, will find very fascinating. And in addition, we'll talk about some other things. We'll have a couple other speakers, so it should be a very interesting program. And right now, I'd just like to talk a little about Shmuel Yaakov. Shmuel, everybody knows him as Shmuel. Shmuel grew up in Ohio, and he grew up in Cleveland, a suburb of Cleveland, as a typical American Jewish kid. His father was a dentist, and he went to college. He went to university, Miami University of Ohio, and Ohio State, two colleges. But I think it was when he was at Miami University of Ohio is when he went, one summer he went and visited Rabbi Kalmanson's Chabad house in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's important to mention it because that's when the miracle began. That's when his life transformed from a typical secular Jewish kid with some knowledge, obviously, of Judaism, but where he met Rabbi Kalmanson, was exposed to Hasidus Chabad, and the miracle happened. The miracle of transforming his life to a life of Torah and mitzvahs and Hasidus. And I just want to say that it's amazing that today there's over 4,000 branches of Chabad worldwide. It's by far the biggest Jewish organization in the world. It's staffed by rabbis and shluchim that are out there totally on the mission to introduce Judaism, true, authentic Judaism, Hasidus, to, unfortunately, people that are ignorant of it. And Shmuel was one of them. And when he came, he never looked back. The miracle happened. He came to the 770. He came to Crown Heights, met the Rebbe, saw that this was the truth. And then, of course, he went to yeshiva. Rabbi Lipsker from Tiferes Bocharim in Morristown, New Jersey, one of the Chabad Bala Tshuva yeshivas. And then he came and got married and settled in Crown Heights. And when he was in Crown Heights, one of the things we learn about is that he was also, as a newlywed, I'm going to talk a little about his tzedakah. I think if everybody knows that there's generally one mitzvah that a person has a chayas in and a real cheshek for, and that was clearly tzedakah. And as I'll explain a little later, it was so exceptional. I've been around tzedakah for my whole adult life, and I could say it's extremely rare to see the passion, the amount that he gave, the desire. It literally was like a craving to give tzedakah. It was unbelievable. And if there's one lesson to take from tonight, there's going to be two lessons I hope to convey. One is how incredible family he built. Look at his children up here. They all came in from all over the world. You know, Levi came up from Florida, made it 6 o'clock tonight. Thank God he's here. Everybody completed it. And, you know, it says that he passed away. It was Nifter right after Parshas Vayechi, in the same order it is this year. And what you know about Vayechi is Yaakov, and that's Shmuel Yaakov. And it says that Yaakov's sons were all perfect. He had a mita shlema. He had a complete bed. His children were all tzaddikim. Guys, you got a big thing to live up to, huh? All tzaddikim. But one of the things that's amazing is that Kanan Ari is a very big family. Shmuel raised a very big family, even by Chabad standards. And all of them are proud, practicing Hasidim of the Rebbe. Isn't that very great? I think that's amazing. So it says there, the Rebbe explains that in the Parsha, that Vayechi, so it starts with Vayechi, but it's really, most of the Parsha deals with Yaakov preparing for his death. And, you know, and he's giving his brachos to the kids, the Shvatim, and then they bury him. So the Rebbe asks a question. What the Rebbe asks, inasmuch as the name of the Parsha, and there's amazing sichos about every Parsha, the Rebbe would say that the name of the Parsha, whether it's Toldos or Bereshis or Noah, it shows on the essence of that Parsha. So the Rebbe says, how come if Vayechi, then he shall live, and he lived. He lived is the essence of the Parsha. How come it deals with his passing? And the Rebbe answers there, the fact that the Rebbe explains one only attains true life when his ideals are passed on to his children. Mazaro b'chaim, avhu b'chaim. And that's why it says Yaakov lo meis. One of the pshat is that because his children carried on his way, they were all tzaddikim. They were the fathers of Yiddishkeit that we're celebrating 3,300 years later. It's amazing. And that's why Yaakov was living, because he passed that on, and he saw that before he passed into Olam HaEmes, he saw that his children were following his ideals. So he had true life. The Rebbe explains that is true life. When you pass on to your Zara, Mazara b'chaim, avhu b'chaim, that's the most important thing. That's what true life is. And we can see that with the Finks. And I don't want to put pressure on you guys, but thank God, Shmuel's very proud of you. He was always talked so much about all of you. And he was very involved with all of their lives on an individual basis. Not only did we talk, our primary relationship was in learning. We shared a shir together, a daily shir, 5 days a week for an hour for over 10 years, 8 years. And then in tzedakah, and we were involved with the yeshiva, Tiferes Menachem. So I got to know him very well, but I can say that he was so proud of his family, and I think that's really amazing. So this is really an amazing success to raise a large family, Kanan Ara, with love and care and devotion. But to see them all go in the ways of Torah, that is true life. Vayechi, Shmuel, and that's what I want to say tonight as an introduction. Thank you. Okay, so before we hear a siyum from Ari, again, his youngest son. And he davened, all of the fellows davened. It was amazing to see. We're going to hear from Simon Jacobson in L.A. He's in L.A. now, but he's going to be live. He's live with us. He's going to talk for about 7 or 8 minutes about Kaddish, the importance of Kaddish. I mean, unfortunately, I'm an oval this year. And Kaddish, as these fellows know, takes over your life. It literally takes over your life. And these fellows, one of them, Sruli, lives in Colorado. He had to drive 2.5 hours, 6 days a week. 2.5 hours, 6 days a week, a whole year for 11 months to make sure he didn't miss Minyanim and led the Minyan in Kaddish and Minyan. All of his sons, they flew to Florida, they flew to business conventions, and wherever they went, they made sure, there's a famous picture, who was it? Who was at the airport at JFK? Mayor? They organized. Did the Chabad of the airport make sure that happened? I'm afraid to travel. I got to be honest. I haven't traveled this year because I know traveling. Traditionally, I've talked to a number of people, and they say that's the one you got to be careful about. So, kol hakavod to the fellows that they said it. It was like the first week right after Shiva, I saw all of them, all his boys going to 770, each getting minyanim. And they lived with their father, and they didn't miss minyanim, and they were Mesiras Nefesh for minyanim, and it's an incredible accomplishment. So also, I think we should give them a hand for that. It's really something. And your father really appreciated it. You guys really elevated him, no question about it. So right now, before Ari's going to say his siyum on Megillah and say Kaddish, that I thought Simon Jacobson, Rabbi Jacobson, is he on? Is he live? We'll speak about the importance of Kaddish, because I think he might mention there that in Kaddish it doesn't mention mourning at all. Why do we say Kaddish? A mourner says Kaddish. It doesn't say anything about death or mourning in Kaddish. But I'll let Rabbi Jacobson explain it. Thank you.
It's a great honor to be with you. And as Rabbi Gold just said, technology allows us to unite in unique ways. There's nothing greater than honoring a neshama, a soul, a sacred soul, especially one that has done so much good in this world. So Kaddish. What is Kaddish? It's one of the most hallowed and solemn prayers in Judaism. I would even say the most solemn one. We say it every day, many times. People who are grieving or mourning over their loved ones say it. We all have the visions and we have the memories of it being said in the most tragic moments. We always sanctified souls by saying Kaddish. But it seems to be a very mysterious prayer, because nowhere does it mention at all the departed, the name of the departed, their memory, their legacy, their history. So it seemed like if someone heard Kaddish for the first time, they say, why are we saying Kaddish? Why are we sanctifying God's name? And telling us how exalted and how hallowed God's name is. Yiskadol v'yiskadosh Shmei Rab. So one of the first sources that we find for the power of Kaddish is actually a very ancient medrash that tells us a story about Rabbi Akiva. This medrash is cited in many different places. The Rebbe cites it actually when he finished saying Kaddish on the Rebbetzin, Chaim Mushka, in the year 1989. And it's a very touching and powerful story. Rabbi Akiva, the Medrash tells us, was in a cemetery. We don't know why, but he was in a cemetery. And he sees a strange sight. He sees a man covered in charcoal black, hurrying about, chopping down wood, and collecting and gathering it. He goes over to the man and says to him, "What are you doing?" And the man says, "I need to go, I need to go." He says, what's your story? If you're a pauper, I'll help pray that you become wealthy. If you're a slave to a master, I'll help free you. And the man says, "Please leave me alone, because those that have sent me here may get upset, and I need to be there on time with the wood." Rabbi Akiva, of course, did not let go. He goes over to the man and says, "What is your story? Who are you?" And he says, "I'm a man from another world. I'm not from the living. I lived a very tragic life, very cruel life, and now I am paying back for all that I've done. And one of my punishments is that I need to gather this wood, and every night I am punished on the wood, on the fire of the wood that turns me charcoal black." Rabbi Akiva, being Rabbi Akiva, of course, the lover of Jews, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, Rabbi Akiva said, this klal gadol b'Torah, the fundamental principle of Torah. So Rabbi Akiva says to him, "And have they told you? Is there any way for you to redeem yourself?" So he says, "Yes, but it's too late for me." "What is the way? What have they told you?" He said that if I had a child, and that child said Kaddish, and people would respond, "Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavarach La'ol Mamal Ma'i Yisbarach," that would redeem me. But I don't think I have a child. When I died, my wife was pregnant. I don't know if she gave birth. So he says, "Who are you? What's your name?" He said, "My name is Ukba. My wife's name is Shashiva. And we come from a city called Lanuka'a." Lanuka'a. Rabbi Akiva says, okay. He goes to the city and starts asking around, "Does anybody know an Ukba?" And they begins hearing curses. "Ukba, may his bones be grinded." "What about Shashiva? May she be cursed forever." They were hated because they were very cruel people, and the city hated them. And he said, "Did they have a child?" "Yes, they had a child, but we've rejected the child. We've thrown the child away." "Where's this child? Where can I find him?" Rabbi Akiva went and sought him out and found him and saw that he had no education. He wasn't even circumcised. So he circumcised him. This is all the Medrash, quoting straight from the Medrash. He circumcised him and began teaching him Aleph Beis, because he had no Hebrew, to be able to say Kaddish for his father. It didn't work. So Rabbi Akiva said, "I'm going to fast 40 fasts." A voice from heaven said, "What do you want?" He says, "I guarantee this boy, I want you to let me teach him Hebrew so he can say Kaddish." And then that was allowed. He took him to a minyan. He said Kaddish, and people answered, "Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabba." And from then on, Ukba was freed. That night, the Medrash concludes, Rabbi Akiva had a dream. Ukba came to the dream with tears in his eyes. I said, "Thank you. You've redeemed me." This is the power of Kaddish, the power of a child. Now, of course, in this case, it was a tragic case. When you're talking about an neshama that has done great good deeds. So the Arizal says something interesting. He says, mistake people make is that Kaddish is only to redeem from iniquities, to cleanse us from sins. No, that's a mistake. Kaddish helps elevate a soul from one level to the next level. So why is it that we don't mention the name of the deceased? Why don't we mention his neshama, his family, anything? Because the greatest response to death is Yiskadel v'Yiskadel Shmei Rabba. Everybody thinks, how can we beat death? What answers do we have? We have no answers when death strikes. Even the great Moshe Rabbeinu shuddered when he heard the word death. There's no words. There's no explanation. How can you beat death? The only way, Kaddish teaches us an immortal lesson. You want to reach a place of true life, you have to go back to the source of life. So as much as we would remember the departed soul, as much of the good deeds, it's still mortal. You want to really reach eternity, you have to go back to the eternal source of life. So we say, Yiskadel v'Yiskadel Shmei Rabba. That's the true comfort. That transcends life and death. It goes to a place that's beyond birth and beyond death, the source of it all. And when a child, like in the case of Rabbi Akiva, who appreciated, understood this power, when a child says it, he's invoking the eternal power of life in this world. And there's no greater consolation than that. So we say Kaddish, and children say Kaddish. Now we're coming to the Yartzeit. This is the Yartzeit of Shmuel Yaakov Fink, Olav HaSholem. And the children have said, each one who said Kaddish, if they said them all throughout, over 5,500 times they said Kaddish. And all that elevates the soul. Every Kaddish elevates it to another level and a higher level. So when you're talking about such a beautiful soul, and what I've heard about him, the deeds that he did, and especially the ones that no one knew about, then there's no question that Kaddish is the greatest way to immortalize Shmuel's neshama. And not just immortalize it, but make it a real living life in this world as he lives on. As Rabbi Gold mentioned, Mazayir b'chaim, afu b'chaim. As his children are alive, he is alive. And especially knowing what kind of legacy he left. So we connect to the eternal source of our life through Kaddish. And I look forward in a few moments to share more as we talk about eternal life and the resurrection of the dead.
Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson. And now we'll hear from Ari Fink on his Siyum and his Kaddish.
So, just to give a little background on the Gemara. So, the Gemara, the second to last piece of the Gemara, it says that whenever you go up to the Torah, you see where you're going to read from, and you give a little bit of you touch the word with the mantle of the Torah. So Tosfos says on this that if you kiss the Torah, that if you touch the Torah with the mantle, you get Erech Yamim b'mina b'smayla Esher b'chavid. You get long years on the right hand, and on the left you get wealth. So the Rebbe asks on this, why does Tosfos bring an extra pasuk? He could just say that he gets schar. Why does he have to bring in a whole pasuk? And what connection does this pasuk have with our Gemara? So the Rebbe answers that there are two ways to learn Torah. There's lishma, for the sake of Hashem, and the second way is just to know halachis. You want to know what to do in Judaism, so you learn the halachis. So to know the halachis, that's the left way. That's bismillah. But the right way, that's lishma. So when you do it the left way, when you do it to know halachis, that you get wealth. And for the right way, for lishma, for the sake of Hashem, you get erech yamim, you get long years. And what is the connection why Tosfos brings it here? So, and why does he bring it here with regard to using a mantle to kiss the word that you're going to read from? So it is that when you're actually touching with the mantle, that's the chitzonius part. That's the left way, for the sake of knowing halachis. But when you actually get to the next part, when you get to the Torah, when you actually read from the Torah, that's the pnimius. That's the right way, and that's lishma. And the Rebbe ends off this hadrin, and he says that really you should learn Torah both ways. You should do it for lishma, and you should also do it for the sake of knowing halachis. And then you'll get Erech Yamim b'mina b'smayla Esher b'chavid. You get both rewards. And he ends off in Yirtzeh Hashem. This will have it b'shleimus when the full rewards of Mashiach comes. And the next piece, just to end off, it says Vayidaber Moshe Smeidei Hashem o b'nei Yisrael mitzvasim sheyu keinen eisen kol echad ve'echad bizmanei. That you should read it it says in the pasuk, you should read it the Yamim Tovim all in its time. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in our Brayso, Moshe Tikin Lahem LiYisrael Sheishaylin V'Dershin Binyani Shel Yom Hilchos Pesach B'Pesach Hilchos Atzeres B'Atzeres Hilchos Chag B'Chag. That the Yidden would darshan, they would ask and they would learn the things of that day, the halachis of that day. And they would learn the halachis on Pesach, of Pesach and Atzeres, and Shavuos for Shavuos, and Sukkos for Sukkos. The last Rashi ends off, Vayidaber Smeidei Hashem B'nei Yisrael Moshe tikkun lem liyisol, sheyisholim medoshim yoni shoyim hilchos Pesach is latzeres batzeres. Lama hutzrach lichtev kan v'daber Moshe v'chulu kol ha-mitzvahs kulan le'yomrim Moshe liyisrael. Mau. V'daber Moshe smei Hashem b'nei Yisrael. Why? So the question is that Rashi is asking, why does the Gemara bring in this extra pasuk? Why do we need it? We know that we learn the halachos. Why do we need this pasuk? So it says, Milamed shayemedaber imoin hilches kol moed umoed bizman leidiyat chukei. V'alikim v'seireisov v'kiblu v'kaimu v'schar hamitzvos aleim v'al b'neihem b'zeu baba. That you shall learn the halachis in that specific time, not that you're learning Pesach by Shavuos, that you're learning Pesach by Pesach and Shavuos by Shavuos and Sukkos by Sukkos. That's why he brings the need. That's why there's the need to bring in this pasuk. Hadin Allah b'nei ir v'sukkah l'maseches Megillah. Hadin Allah v'sachim 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 Megillah. Hirat b'menach Hadin Yoteinu L'Avseinu Shedehei Seirasech Amun L'Aseinu Ba'olam Hazeh V'sei Imanu L'Olam Habo Chanina Bar Papa Rami Bar Papa Nachman Bar Papa Achoy Bar Papa Abba Mari Bar Papa Rafram Bar Papa Rachish Bar Papa Surcha Bar Papa Adabar Bar Papa Daru Bar Papa Harav Nadin Eloheinu V'Stiber Seiras Chavavinu V'Kinu V'Fies B'Imcha V'Beis Yisrael Niach Ulan V'Anach V'Seinu V'Seinu V'Amcha Beis Yisrael Klan Yedish Mechel Lem D'Seirasech L'Shma Beis L'Cham V'Einu V'Tveisach Ki L'Olam Hi Li Libi samam chukech laman leivish leilam leiyashach chukech kivach sani baruch atah adinei labdeni chukech amen 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 sala avoid moide manachnu lach adinei leinu labzenu samt chalkenu miyesh bevis hamidrash v'lei samt chalkenu miyesh bekranis v'shanu mashkimim hin mashkimim anim shenidir seira v'hin mashkimim l'dorim betel manu ma'amel v'hin ma'amel manu ma'amel v'mekablim Sachar v'hin ma'amel v'hin mekablim Sachar anu razim v'hin ratzim anu razim l'chayu elam haba v'hin ratzim l'varshach shnamar v'ata l'him v'teri dem l'varshach zanshi dem l'mer l'yechzim v'ani yaftach bach yiratzim v'nech adinei l'hai shem shasarti l'sayim esachas megillah ken zarti l'haskol Sechas baran dachin l'sayim al l'ilmud l'lamid l'ishmai l'asais kaimas kol d'vir samater secha b'yavasus kolatanan v'amireim esamideh chacham yamalanu l'zari liu l'zari shalei samashater m'pim m'pir zari v'zari zami atvenos kaim bi Bis Allah khasan khawi isqam shem khad dishmar Allah v'yaki seisa he's khakha kibir gibro yamach v'zisebel khad seis khayu yacham mirmilay eisha v'chavi Adino Islam itin Adino Varich Zame Vashalim Yiskadal Viskada Shmei Rabo Biyama Debrachiru Sevi Amlech Malchus Sevi Atzmach Berkani Vikar Mishiche Bechaye Chaynu V'yemei Chaynu V'chayde Chol Beis Yisrael Ba'agolov Izman Kari Vimnu Amen Yehei Shmei Rabo Mevorach L'olam Lo Miyomayo Yisporech V'yishtabach V'yispor V'yisraim V'yisnase V'yisador V'yisala V'yisalol Shmei Dekucho Brichu Le'elo Min Kol Berchasa V'shirasa Tush Bechasa V'nechamasa Damir B'oma Vimnu Amen Ayisro V'arabonon V'al Tamideim V'al Kol Tamidei Samideim V'al Kol Mondoskim V'yiraisa V'asra Din V'di V'chol Asar V'asar Yehei Le'inu L'chayin Shlomo Rabo China V'chista V'rachmim Chayin Adi China V'zayner V'yicha Furkana Mikadam Avoyin V'shmaya Vimnu Amen Yehei Shlomo Rabo Min Shemaya V'chaim Tevim Aleinu V'alka Yisrael Vimnu Amen Oisei Shalom V'mreima V'uyasa Shalom Aleinu V'alka Yisrael Vimnu Amen
Thank you, Ari. It's beautiful, beautiful job. Talmud Chacham Ari Lanes beautifully. I think he led the minyan in Ole Torazal for this whole year, for the 11 months. And I think many of his classmates are here. I'm sure he appreciates the support, guys. Ole Torah Chai. The radio audience couldn't see that, obviously, but all of them stood up, the sons, and they were saying Kaddish. It was beautiful to see. It was amazing to see. And, before I want to talk about tzedakah, because this is the one thing that I think truly was so exceptional about Shmuel. Now, he was not Bill Gates or Bloomberg. He is not a billionaire. But he gave at a billionaire's level, relatively speaking. And it started at a young time. I understand a story that I found out at Shiva. And you have to understand, I was involved with Shmuel for 20 years in tzedakah, day to day, because we learned every day. And so after learning, we would talk about Tiferes Menachem Yeshiva and the scholarship program and other inyanim of tzedakah. And I found out so many things that I never knew anyways. One of them was that even when he just became a newlywed, there was a store out on Union Street where he's living, and one day he was in line and he saw that a lady was struggling and was putting it on credit, didn't have money, so he went up to the store owner and said to the store owner, whenever this lady comes in, put it on my credit card. Or I don't know if it's a credit card, I'll pay for it. Write it up and I'll take care of it. Didn't know her. She didn't know him. He didn't have his business. He wasn't financially successful at that point, young, just newly married, and he's still at that point supporting somebody that he just saw online. We talked earlier about Shmuel's children, his Mazara B'chaim, Hu B'chaim. But you know that it says in Torah that there's another children. People can have children that are not biological children. If they teach them Torah, it's considered like their own child. And it says in Noach, you know, Eila Tolos Noach she tzaddik. That on the Eila Tolos Noach, the generations of Noach, the Rashi says there that these are the Toldos, the progeny of tzaddikim, are their maisim tovim, are their good deeds. So I can testify, maybe in a little way more than his own children know, because I was involved with it on a day-to-day basis. I can assure you that he has children throughout the globe. Throughout the globe. Here we have Rabbi Shilkraut, and I hope you don't mind, but Rabbi Shilkraut was a partner. Shmuel was a big partner. It was his amazing Mosdos in Haifa in Israel. He came in, he surprised us tonight. He's a partner with Shmuel. He built. Rabbi, how many students are learning in your school system, may I say? 1,500 students, Kanai, built from zero. That's amazing. And Shmuel was always supporting Rabbi Shilkraut. And he knew him from Cincinnati, actually. That I also found out. But Shmuel had a taiva, a desire to help people with tzedakah. And it was amazing. These are his children. Not only did he help the schools in Haifa, his main one was, of course, Chabad, Tiferes Menachem Yeshiva. I think Rabbi Lipsker came in. I think Rabbi Avram Lipsker is here. His Rosh Yeshiva, who he loved dearly, from Morristown. Rabbi Lipsker, you're there. Shmuel always really changed his life. Rabbi Lipsker here. Rabbi Lipsker probably makarv more Hasidim and Chabad than almost anybody in the whole world. So Rabbi Lipsker should be well, your health, and you should continue, and you should continue to have Hasidic Shanachas from all your kids, including me, who learned in Tiferes in Morristown. It was a very special place. It was an amazing place. It was a miracle place because Chabad is involved with miracles. Chabad changes lives. You know, I wasn't going to say this, but I grew up in the 60s in America as a secular guy myself, and I experienced the 60s. It was very interesting. It was really the most revolutionary time in the United States in my lifetime. And everybody wanted the youth of that time, the hippie movement was against materialism, and they wanted spirituality. And it was a very different country. It was an amazingly different country. But what happened after the Vietnam War ended, and it petered out. The movement hit me. I'm not saying that there weren't some changes, but it was a temporary thing. Most of the people that were against materialism ended up selling stocks on Wall Street. Not that it's bad to sell stocks on Wall Street, but it was that there was the spirituality that they went for, they really were not able to contain and not get. You can get that spirituality in Chabad Hasidus, unlike any place else in the world. And then I can testify from personally, and we have thousands of Baalei Tshuva throughout the world that can testify that Hasidus Chabad can permanently change your life and your children's lives like they did. So I wanted to say about his involvement in tzedakah, because, I mean, Shmuel had a taiva for it. One time I remember coming out of class, and he's reaching in his pocket, you know, like somebody who, God forbid, Lo Aleinu, is reaching for cigarettes. He's going like this in his pockets. And I said, Shmuel, what are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for a check. And I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah, I'm giving out a nice check to tzedakah. Somebody came, I got a nice cause to give to today. A nice cause to give to. That's how he said it. I said, Shmuel. He said, and don't you dare tell my family. Don't you dare tell them. But he had such a tie before it. And what he did for Tiferes Menachem, he was one of the founders, along myself and Menachem Fried Fertig, of course, with Rabbi Lipsker as the Rosh Yeshiva in Seagate. And his dedication to the yeshiva lasted there 20 years, almost 20 years. And we have hundreds of students that went by and through their school and are Hasidim today throughout the world. And Shmuel, along with Yehuda Chekhov, I must mention another name, who was an incredibly big supporter, really kept the school on its feet. And one year when we were trying to sell the building, he took off, and these boys can testify, for 14 months, literally for 14 months, he let his boys run his business. And he'd go daven. I think he was the Avel at that time. He was an Avel. He'd go to 770 daven, Shachris, leave Shachris, go to his office, and he worked straight on Tiferes Menachem selling the building for 14 months. It was a very complicated transaction. If you all remember, Seagate was damaged by Sandy, and it was a very hard situation there. And we had to deal with all sorts of different agencies, and it was a mess. And Shmuel worked on it day and night. No pay. He funded it out of his own pocket. They needed $20,000 here, so I'm sorry to mention the figures, but here, $10,000. He just laid it out. You know, it was amazing. And one time it was, I think it was somebody was coming down to inspect the building. It was in the middle of the winter, and he found out the day before they're coming. So he said, he says, we got to shovel the snow because they're not going to get into the building. There was a snowstorm. So guess who he brought to shovel the snow in Seagate? He brought his kids, Mendy, and I think your sister, right? Is it not right? Wasn't it your sister too? He said, grab a shovel. He went down to Seagate again. During the middle of the day, took off work, didn't work, shoveled the snow to make sure that this deal, the transaction went through. It was in the summer too, so he brought his whole family in. It was not just financial support, it was dated, he lived it. And you know, it was really amazing. And I want to say how difficult it was. That building, when he eventually sold it, and it was very interesting, Shmuel had a heart of gold. Literally a heart of gold. But at the same time, he was an extremely determined person and extremely hard-willed. When he made up his decision and wanted something, if boys will all agree with me, he said, that's it, he'll go for it. There was an agent, a real estate agent trying to sell the building. He showed it to some 30 people, 30 company organizations, nowhere. And I liked him. He was a good agent. Shmuel said, that's it. We're changing agents. And I said, well, and he said, no, he didn't want any more discussion. He took over, hired this other agent, and Baruch Hashem, he sold it. I want to tell you how hard it was, because to this day, that building is empty. It went into foreclosure. Foreclosure, because it's such a hard property to sell. Thank God so many miracles happened there. Thank God Rabbi Lipsker did what he did over there and changed lives. But I'm pointing out here that was truly a 14 months of not only money, but time and effort and love for it. So I want to just say his tzedakah was incredible. I'll tell you one more story, then I will move on for the program, but you got to hear this one. I'm involved with tzedakah every day with Shmuel. So eventually I said to him, you know, we wanted to partner with Chabad on campus, which is doing amazing work, Chabad on campus. There are now over 200 shluchim on college campuses in the United States and growing all the time, changing lives over there. Let's hear it for Chabad on campus. So I said to Shmuel, we want to set up a meeting, but I don't know Yossi Gordon. So he says, don't worry, I do. I said, what? And I said, yeah. He said, I can arrange the meeting. I said, how do you do it? It turns out that Shmuel was on, and they didn't tell me. He became on the board of directors through his donations to support Chabad on campus for the last year and a half or something. He never told me. I guess he didn't want me to think, I don't know, whatever it was. For a year, he didn't tell me that his involvement over there. So even he kept it secret from me. So it was really amazing to see. So at this point, I just want to turn it over to Aaron Barelowitz. We have a new program. even though we did sell the building, we have a program called the Tiferes Menachem Scholarship Program. And we currently have, we've had over 30 lives changed in that program. We scour the United States for top students, secular students, that are interested in Yiddishkeit, but they're not Shomer Shabbos yet. The Shluchim called us, and we make it happen. We send them to the yeshivas, and that was a program that Shmuel and I worked on very hard in the last few years. And I want you to introduce you to one of our payroll, to Shmuel's payroll, Aaron Berolowitz. I want to introduce him. He has a BS degree from University of Massachusetts in Amherst in civil and environmental engineering. He is currently at Hadar Torah, but he'll explain briefly. He is a Tiferes Menachem scholar that has changed, lives have been changed through Shmuel Fink and our involvement. Aaron?
I grew up in a traditional Jewish house, which means that we had Shabbos dinner every week and went to shul, but we didn't keep Shabbos, we didn't keep kashrus, and overall, our main mindset was kind of a more secular Western mindset, and that Judaism was more like an extracurricular. I also grew up in a Chabad house in Natick, Massachusetts, and I always had an interest in Judaism. I used to go quite often with my father to shul, kind of random times. And I was always asking the rabbi questions. I was always interested in knowing what I'm supposed to do. I didn't necessarily know why. I didn't really know where any of it was coming from. But like there was something there. So I kind of started to take on things on my own. And then when I went to college to University of Massachusetts, I was able to then take on more things and start to grow more in my Yiddishkeit. And I got connected with Chabad on campus, thank God. And eventually got myself to Mayanot, and I spent a total of a year and a half in Mayanot, and then I came now to Hadar Torah. And really what happened for me when I went to Mayanot the first time was that the connection that I'd had growing up for so many years, it became revealed more what that was. And specifically it was through Chassidus that allowed me to see what that connection was. That I realized that Judaism is not just this thing that I have as an extracurricular activity on the side, but Judaism is the main thing that I'm doing, and that everything else is for the sake of serving God, ultimately. Chassidus taught me to look beyond my own ego and look to see how I can fit into the world as bringing what I have, the special, unique talents that Hashem gave to me, what I can do with those talents in order to ultimately help to the general population to fulfill the purpose of God to make a dwelling place, and I owe it all to the Chassidus that I've learned that's taught me that. And so I just want to say thank you to Shmuel Fink and to the Tiferes Menachem Scholarship Program for giving me the opportunity to spend so far 2 years in yeshiva, and God willing, I plan to keep learning for longer, and just in general for changing my life. So thank you.
Aaron's an amazing young man, and I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a shliach himself. And that's the kind of things that Chabad does, and the teachings of the Rebbe, Chassidus does. The power, the nuclear energy of Torah is in Chabad Chassidus. And if anybody in the listening audience wants to learn Chassidus, they can text us or send an email to us at Tiferes Scholars. That's TIFERES Scholars. At gmail.com, tiferesscholars@gmail.com, and we will set you up with a learning partner over the phone or in person, as well as if you're interested in attending yeshiva full time. That's tiferesscholars@gmail.com. Anybody want to be involved and change your life for the best? It's an amazing experience, and join tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Jewish people, young people throughout the world that are realizing that they were never exposed to the authentic teachings of Torah and the incredibly beautiful lifestyle of Torah and mitzvahs. It's absolutely incredible, and I wish and hope everybody will contact us, and we'll try to help you out. That's the Rebbe's way, to help out everybody at anywhere, in any place. And before we get to Rabbi Jacobson for the final address tonight, I want to say two more things. One about the Mrs. Fink. Mrs. Fink is as we know in Chassidus, a husband and wife are one half of each of a neshama, one entire neshama. Mrs. Fink has been, an incredible akeres abayis for her family, and a pillar for their family, and a true partner with Shmuel in everything they've done and brought up their family and the tzedakah they give, and the haknasas orchim. Their house has been literally open to thousands of, maybe thousands, wouldn't you say, over the years? Hundreds for sure, for Shabbos and Yontiv that just come into the door. Shmuel loved hosting, and Mrs. Fink loved hosting on Shabbos and Yontiv. Their door was always open to guests that they didn't even know. And they would come, and sometimes I'd probably sleep there. And, they just were amazing. That's Avraham Avinu and Sarah Amenu. They're just a total chesed opening up their house. And it was really amazing. And so, Mrs. Fink, it's a hard time, incredibly hard time, mostly for you, I'm sure. So even though, we're talking about the hashgacha process of Vayechi, it's also the same. It's not only a parsha of Vayechi, but it's also Parsha Chazak. And Hashem should bless you to continue to be Chazak, and Shmuel seeing everything you do, and the relationship continues, just not on a horizontal plane, but on a vertical plane from Gan Eden down here, and I'm sure you want him on a horizontal plane in Olam Hazeh Gashmi, which will come very shortly, as Rabbi Jacobs will explain about Techias HaMesim. So, but it's amazing what we accomplished, and also she's an amazing cook. She's an amazing cook. So thank you, Mrs. Fink. And I want to say one more thing about the daughters. I don't know the daughters as well as the sons, but I did see the daughters, especially during the last few months of Shmuel's illness. The love and the care, 24/7 they gave was unbelievable. And Shmuel told me that, and I saw it with my own eyes. It was just such love and care and respect in the family. It's so beautiful to see. It's an amazing thing to see. Such a beautiful family. So before Rabbi Jacobs concludes our program, I want Aaron Revere, the son-in-law of Shmuel, would like to say a few words. Aaron?
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Revere. I'm proud to say I am Shmuel Fink's son-in-law. I remember learning in Masechtas Brachas about an Amira who went to a cemetery at night and heard two voices, the voices of two young girls that had passed away. He heard them talking about the coming year, and there was going to be an exceptional wheat crop that year. With this knowledge, he profited greatly in the upcoming year. The next year, he went back again, and he heard one girl's voice say to the other, "Quiet, we are causing problems on the other side of the curtain." From this story, the Gemara shows that the deceased know what goes on here in our world, that they hear our voices, and I hope Shver is enjoying what we are saying here tonight. A son or daughter-in-law has a unique perspective on a family. They join a family as an adult, not as a child, yet they are instantly a part of the family with all of its dynamics, its past and its future. So let me tell you about my Shver. My Shver was a character. My first time meeting my future Shver was at a Friday night meal. Thanks to Mayor Fink, I had a place to eat that night. My Shver that night, I was just another bacher passing through. They had many. And it was likely that my name would simply be forgotten, or at least butchered, the next time I came over, as happened to many of my friends, just as Zalman Lever or Folly 11. Later that year, after Chaya and I had been dating, I decided to be old-fashioned and call Shmuel to say that I had planned to propose, and thought that for sure by then he would know my name. So I called Shmuel, and I said, "Hello, Mr. Fink, this is Aaron Revere." "Who?" I said, "Mr. Fink, this is Aaron Revere." "Who?" "This is Aaron Revere." "Are we doing business together? Are we working together? Who are you?" I said, "I'm dating your daughter." Oh, yes. "Hi, Aaron, how can I help you? What's going on?" I said, "I wanted to tell you that I plan on proposing to your daughter tonight." "Oh, listen, will you do me one favor? Will you call my wife and check with her first?" So he taught me my very first lesson about marriage that day: always check with your wife. Well, then we were engaged, and it was a happy and exciting time. Shver told me that he wanted to get me a chassan watch. He suggested a Movado. He loves Movados, but they weren't my style, so he gave me a decent budget and assigned Morty Wordy to the task of helping me Select one. I remember we were scrolling through a website looking at hundreds and hundreds of watches. But I didn't like anything that was within budget. I didn't like the styles. So at last we found one watch, but it was just over budget. Morty Wordy didn't think that I had a good chance of convincing Schwer to go over budget. It took a little prodding, maybe more than a little prodding, but I somehow managed to persuade him to buy it. It's the watch that I'm wearing now, and I wear it almost every day. The watch was great. It ticked and time passed. Next came our wedding, and it was such a wonderful day, a beautiful day, and after the chuppah was done, it was time for dinner. I remember sitting at the head table, and I had been warned that if the food wasn't perfect, Schwer would feel that the entire wedding party was a disappointment. So I cut into my steak, and it was delicious, cooked to perfection. So happily, I turned to my Schwer and I said with a smile, "Schwer, isn't the steak good?" But he was looking dejectedly at his steak, and he said, "It's raw." That's when I learned that my Schwer liked his steaks well done. The watch kept running, and as time passed, we moved to Los Angeles. My daughter was born. We came to visit for Sukkot, Pesach, and summertime. We danced on Simchas Torah, and we drank on Purim. We celebrated weddings together and the birth of grandchildren. Schwer and I would joke and talk about business and politics, and especially economics. And then it was the summer of 2018. My in-laws came to visit California, and Schwer complained about how hot it was in his room, despite the air conditioning we had in the room. After careful investigation, it turned out that Schwer had laid his towel on top of the unit, accidentally closing the vents. Then we got the diagnosis. Then our son was born just after Sukkot, and Schwer couldn't make it to the bris. We came for Hanukkah that year, and I just remember being totally shocked by his condition. The change from summer to winter was dramatic. I was lost for words. I was helpless to come up with words to comfort anyone in the family. The last thing I said to Schwer was, "You have to get better. Who else am I going to discuss the Wall Street Journal with?" The watch is still ticking, but at some times it feels like time is standing still. I've seen, from an in-law's perspective, how each family member has tried to cope with the pain. If all goes well, you only get one Schwer. And I owe my Schwer a lot. For raising the most amazing daughter, my wife, for the life and the family he made, the brother and sisters-in-law that I never had growing up, the happy home and the joyful memories, and for sometimes allowing me to sit in the lounge chair in the kitchen, and other times telling me, "That's my chair, get up." Thank you, Schwer, for all the good memories and for the most wonderful family. On behalf of my mother-in-law, I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight. She always said she was zeicha to be married to a wonderful man. We would like to thank all family and friends who were always there for my mother-in-law and our family. A special thank you again to Dr. Rosen and his staff, Hatzalah, Menachem Friedman, Zev Nelkin, Rabbi Sternbach, and Aaron Rosenberg. Special thank you to the Einshem Meise Shul for becoming part of our family. We love being with you. Last but not least, thank you to Rabbi Gorelik for always being available for our family. Hashem should send Mashiach now so we can walk together with my Schwer physically through the gates of Yerushalayim. Amen.
Thank you, Aaron. Very beautifully said. A lot of personal touch and humor. Okay, before we get to Rabbi Jacobson, I just want to give a bracha. I can't omit the fact that Shmuel built a very thriving, successful, high-tech business, and I just want to give a bracha to Shimon, the oldest son, who is CEO. You know, I'm not putting any pressure on you, Shimon. I'm giving you a bracha that you should be able to take it from Yel Choil Mechoil, from strength to strength. And you should go much higher with the business and help a lot, give a lot more tzedakah, as your father would be very proud of. And you support your families, bar harchava, l'chatzlacha. So now we'll get to the concluding discussion. I think it'll be fascinating about Techias HaMeisim and, of course, Chaim Nitzchim. And there will be talk by Rabbi Jacobson. I just want to, most of the people here in our audience in Crown Heights know Rabbi Jacobson. I just want to say some words to the listening audience at WSNR. Rabbi Jacobson is the author of Toward a Meaningful Life, which is to this day the best-selling book about the teachings of the Rebbe's Chassidus, the Rebbe's teachings ever made. Sold over 400,000 copies worldwide. It's been translated into 14 different languages. And I personally give it out to people that are not religious yet, not observant, don't know about Torah mitzvahs, don't know the perspective of the Rebbe, and invariably people say, wow, this is an amazing perspective on life. It's incredible. So this is something that Rabbi Jacobson's great schus that he's done. Also, you should know that he is what's called an oral scribe. He was one of the Chosrim, one of the fundamental Chosrim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because on Shabbos and on Yom Tov and holidays, you obviously can't use a tape recorder. And sometimes the Rebbe on Shabbos would speak for 4, 5, 6 hours, and sometimes especially Rabbi Jacobson said when it was a 3-day Yom Tov, 2 days Yom Tov and Shabbos, and the Rebbe might speak, four times, and you have to memorize all the talks of the Rebbe, and then you have to transcribe them and then publish them. And Rabbi Jacobson was one of the main fundamental scribes, oral scribes that did this. It's an incredible accomplishment. He's one of my teachers, personal teachers. I learned tremendous from him. He knows an amazing amount. He's truly expert on the Rebbe's teachings. Of course, he wrote up a lot of. He says, "Oh, that Eliezer, that one I wrote up," and the Rebbe came back and said this and this on it. It was amazing to hear and to see that. And we're very fortunate to have him tonight speak about Chaim Nitzchim and Techiyas HaMesim. And I just want to let people know that he asked one more thing, that he has a program called My Life Chassidus Applied. My Life Chassidus Applied, which I think everybody here realizes that he's really revolutionized the Chassidus. He's applied Chassidus and the teachings on a weekly basis for over 3 years now. I think he's up to 400 episodes. Where he applies it to all aspects of life, all questions. People send in questions to him, and he answers it based on the Rebbe's Torah. It's called My Life Chassidus Applied, and if you want to go to it, you can go to chassidusapplied.com. Chassidus, that's CHASSIDUS. chassidusapplied.com. Of course, you can see him on the YouTube and spreading the teachings of Chassidus. And it's Simon Jacobson with S-I-M-O-N, not Shimon, Simon Jacobson, Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson. And now we're going to turn to you to hear, I'm sure, a fascinating discussion about when we can expect Shmuel to be Lamata Masar Tefachim with the Gula Shlema.
We're honoring a yahrzeit, and a yahrzeit of a very special soul, as we've just all heard. It's always difficult to talk in times like this, even if you're not a relative, even if you're not personally a personal friend, because the loss of any neshama beguf, any soul in the body, is the loss for all of us. And we are all one organism, part of one larger reality. And indeed, a loss is not just a loss for each one of us, it's also a loss for God in a certain way, kavyachol, so to speak. So, how does Torah, how does Judaism deal with this unfathomable, literally unfathomable abyss called death? You find in society all types of approaches. Everybody wants to find the fountain of youth, to find eternal life. The pharaohs of old tried to do it through their methods of embalmment, the pyramids, and so on. You have modern times cryogenic freezing, and even the cosmetics industry in a certain way, Botox, and so on, trying to beat aging, mortality. No one has been successful, obviously. So what is the Jewish approach? We know the most powerful phrase related to a passing and a yahrzeit is V'hachayit na libai, mentioned earlier. A verse in the book of Ecclesiastes, Kehelis, Shlomo Melech, V'hachayit na libai, and the living shall take to heart. When you think about it, that contains tremendous lessons. The living, meaning us, beginning with the family, Mrs. Fink, all the beautiful children, all family, all friends, and all of us gathered here, and frankly, even those not gathered here. V'achai, the living shall take to heart. Do not ignore. Do not go into denial. Don't avoid it. Take it to heart. In the literal sense, that means to be more introspective, soul-searching. It's a time for accountability. It's a time for looking inside our own hearts and souls to see where do we stand. But if you think about it, it's even deeper than that. V'achayit nelibe means it gives us an opportunity to think about life itself. As they say, sometimes the eclipse of the sun teaches us more about sunlight than regular light does. So when there's an eclipse and there's a passing and a soul moves on to its next stage in life, it's a time to think about life, the beginning of life. And why are we here? What is our purpose? I'll never forget when the Rebbe mourned and grieved for his Rebbetzin, Chaim Mushka. The year was 1988. Chav Beishvat, the Rebbetzin, passed away. The lifelong partner, the daughter of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the wife of the Rebbe. What struck me, I remember, was something that was very uncharacteristic. The Rebbe was very discreet, very private. When his mother passed away, Rebbe Tzachana, in 1964, Vav Tishrei, I was a little kid, but I heard from many, it was very discreet. The Rebbe didn't talk about it openly that much. You didn't see much emotion. Obviously, internally, we did see, but not on an external level. When it came in 1988, by stark contrast, it couldn't have been more obvious. The Rebbe saying Kaddish every day, davening for her every day, 3 times a day, moving his whole operation from 770 to his house on President Street. There was a change in virtually every aspect of the Rebbe's life and teachings. Farbrengens changed. The Rebbe stopped saying Hasidic discourses. I'm not going to go through a list of everything, but it was a dramatic change. And it was clear that the Rebbe wanted us to see it. Every Farbrengen, V'achayit nelibe, the living shall take to heart. And I always wondered why suddenly the Rebbe felt that need to express it. I remember at the end of the Shleishim, 30 days after the passing of the Rebbetzin, that heart-wrenching talk the Rebbe gave that Shabbos. It was Pasha Kisisa about Para Aduma. And I was literally crying and saying that even Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe, shuddered, trembled when he was exposed to death. And he said to God, Bametei tarase, how will we ever purify from that? And the Rebbe asked the question, we know God giveth, God taketh. Just like God gave purifications for other impurities, He can give one for this as well. We can heal from this as well, from death. The Rebbe responded, and you can see he was talking about himself, that even though Moshe was Chachma Vatzilus, meaning he had the ultra wisdom, understood the divine plan, and he understood that every Yerida, every descent brings to a greater ascent, and there's a bigger picture, and there's Tchias HaMesim, and a soul lives on. Us mortals, you can say, we cry because we don't see the bigger picture, but he knew the bigger picture. And he knew everything that it says in Chassidus about the soul's eternity. And yet, he shuddered. Why? Because when you face death, and you see even a small disconnect, even though you know the soul lives on, that is cause for pain. And even Moshe was at loss for words. And he needed God directly and personally to console him. You could see the Rebbe was speaking that even though intellectually you can understand, but emotionally there's a void and a vacuum. And that disconnect, even for a second, that the material body that was joined together with the soul and lived a life, a beautiful life, even for 1 second disconnect, means there's some type of spiritual and divine concealment. But then, when my father passed away, I had an epiphany, a very powerful one. I realized that the Rebbe, like a true Rebbe, was giving us guidance. He wanted us to see. This is my own thought. He wanted us to see that even a great Rebbe, as connected as he is, cries as well. And gave us guidance, not just for the good times, but also when it's difficult. And we can learn much from that. I am in it with you. Obviously in a completely different level and we can't compare ourselves. But still. And I gained so much consolation and strength from saying, I'm walking through those footsteps that the Rebbe walked. Not comparing again, but still some strength. And I want to say this particularly to the Fink family. That's where we get strength in times when we don't have answers. Not that we'll find an answer, but we get power. We may not have answers, as one Hasidic Rebbe once told a grieving individual. I may not have answers for you, but I can cry with you. And that gives strength and power. So what do we learn about true life? How does our approach, the Torah Jewish approach, teach us something about life that we don't learn except when we're faced with a passing? So let me share a personal story. Many years ago, I was invited to speak at a yard site. It was in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I was being driven in a minivan. And I was thinking about what am I going to say exactly. I always find myself lost of words because I don't want to get up there and pontificate and give all kinds of thoughts and ideas. People are suffering. There's a deep void, a hole inside the person's heart and soul. So I always know the expression, the Baal Shem Tov says, everything is a lesson in life. So I said to myself, let me look around for the signs. No pun intended. And I saw a sign. I'm traveling up the West Side Highway to the Upper West Side, and I see a big billboard. The billboard was an ad for Newport cigarettes. I know you may say, what does that have to do with anything? Just bear with me. Newport cigarettes. A couple, those beautiful faces, smiling, beaming, young, vibrant, and the whitest teeth you've ever seen. And it says, alive with pleasure. That's the ad. And of course, there's that prerequisite box in the bottom left that says smoking kills or something like that. Of course, the bizarre paradox of all, and irony. And yet, they spend billions of dollars on advertising because people either ignore the boxes, they see the beautiful faces. And I said to myself, and this became a thought that I shared at that yard site. I said to myself, here's the perfect lesson. Here's the perfect lesson. Alive, not just alive, with pleasure. Why? Because everybody wants to look like this young couple. But how much Photoshop went into making those pictures look so beautiful? Is that really the color of the teeth of smokers? Do we have an x-ray of their lungs? No, but it looks right. As in Madison Avenue marketing, they say, it doesn't matter what happened, it matters what people think happened. And lahavdil, stark contrast. We're just coming from Parsha Vayechi, literally this past Shabbos. And you read Vayechi, the name of the chapter is lived. Who lived? Vayakov lived. And we're talking about Yaakov, Shmuel Yaakov. Yaakov lived. So you think the name of a chapter, like the name of a book or the name of a chapter, should reflect on what that chapter has to say. Well, lo and behold, you read a sentence or two, immediately it says that he lived, yes, he lived 17 years in Mitzrayim, and immediately it starts talking about his preparations for death. How he calls his children, and he gives the blessings and everything, all the promises, and calls in Joseph, where he should be buried. Why would that's called truth in advertising, so to speak? A name of a chapter that's supposed to talk about life, that's the name of it, and it talks about the opposite of life. You want to name a chapter the life of Yaakov? We have chapters galore before that. We have Vayigash, we have Miketz, we have Vayeshev, we have Vayishlach, And we have Vayetze when he's born. Of all chapters, the one that's chosen, that's called Life of Yaakov, or Life, is the passing of Yaakov. Now there's a similar question, and the same thing with Chayei Sarah. You go to the chapter Chayei Sarah, this is the year, the life of Sarah. So you would think, okay, we're going to hear about her life. Nope. She lived 127 years and she passed away. And we talk about how Avram goes and buys a burial plot and how he grieves after her and then sends a messenger to go find a shidduch to continue the legacy for his son Yitzchak. There's a story of life of Sarah is the chapter or two before that. And the Rebbe gives this most powerful answer. You want to know when someone's truly alive? You don't look when they're breathing, when their heart is beating and their mind is working, and they have people who they influence, and maybe memorable and beautiful things that they've done. That's living on a certain level. That's called biological life. Maybe more than biological life. It can be also emotional and intellectual life. You want to know when someone's truly alive? Look at the day when they're no longer here physically. Are they remembered? Or do they want to, or people want to forget them? There were great monarchs in history. When they were in power, everyone trembled before them. And the moment they're gone, nobody wants to remember them. And Lahavdil, Sarah, not only is she remembered the day after by Avram and Yitzchak, here 3,500 years later, we talk about Sarah like she's living with us. We talk about Yaakov like he's one of ours. Yaakov, Avinu, our father Yaakov. That's true life. That's the real litmus test of life. When you see what happens afterwards. So, I hope I won't be sued by Newport cigarettes, but with all due respect to them, yes, alive with pleasure. It's not alive and not pleasure. It's external, superficial, selling something. But that's what we buy into. We think that's called life. You ask a doctor, what's life? He'll tell you the biological definition of life. You ask the Torah, what is life? Life is the influence, the legacy. What impact did you leave? There are powerful people in history and we don't even know that they existed. We don't have their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I speak very often to audiences and I say, who's the greatest philosopher in the Western world? They say Aristotle. The greatest English writer, Shakespeare. The greatest artist, okay, Rembrandt. You have different arguments. Musician, Beethoven, Bach. Not getting into which one. I said, let me ask you something. Do they have any children? Did they have any children? People start saying, 1 second, let me Google that. Wikipedia. What about grandchildren, great-grandchildren? They may have left beautiful art and music and literature and thoughts and ideas. Where are their children? We don't even know if they had children. If it was so vital to life, why didn't they teach it to their children? Come Avram Avinu, who was a greater philosopher perhaps than all of them. And what is the greatest tribute we say? He did not take his philosophy, and he was a great philosopher and thinker, and of course, a pioneer of social justice, of tzedakah. That was not the essence. By him, if he does not leave a family and a legacy and children that will continue the path of tzedakah and mishpat, that's not called living. It means, yes, he's alive and he could be powerful and very influential. Living means Mazari b'chaim, afu b'chaim, literally. The children continue and live on and pass on and perpetuate the teachings, the life, the nobility, the virtue of their parents. And then he too is alive. That's the definition of true life. So if you want to conquer death, the way is not to find another mortal response to achieve immortality. You need to bring into your life something that's immortal, and that is the soul's contribution to this world that never dies, because a neshama never dies. There's a very powerful statement from the Baal Shem Tov. It talks about consolation, comfort, nechama. That there are 3 ways we grieve, and 3 stages of grief after the passing of a loved one. One is silence. The immediate reaction is usually shock, such utter shock. The second is tears, where we at least can express, we feel, and we express ourselves through tears. And then the third one is the most interesting. He says, melody, a song. A song is a form of comfort. And when the Baal Shem Tov was asked song, We understand silence. Silence captures the inscrutability and the impossibility to understand what death is about. Tears, of course, is another form of grief. But how does a song? A song seems to be more of a uplifting thing. And the Baal Shem Tov answered, because every human being doesn't just sing a song, it is a song. He's a walking, talking melody. So when we sing, and of course in the right stage, in the right time, what we're saying is that the melody, the unique song, the unique melody of this person's soul does not cease. So we continue to sing and perpetuate his song. Every one of us has a unique song, and perhaps many songs. Very often it's trapped within us. But then there are people we see clearly that they've sung their melody, and they've touched many people, knowing or unknowing. Many times, as I hear again about Shmuel, Rab Shmuel Fink, that many things he did, but probably we still don't even know all his chesed due to his personality. But these were all songs, and they left lasting impact. And we continue singing that song. So when you think of it that way, it's a whole new take on life and death. Yes, death is terrifying. We are all terrified of death. But we understand with our minds, and this is what Chassidus teaches us, that life does not begin when the soul enters this body, and it doesn't end when the soul leaves the body. I, as many rabbis I'm sure, are asked the question, where does the soul go to after 120 years? Where does it go to? And I've always been a loss of words over the years. What do you answer? How do you answer that question? Then I just had one day, I just thought a thought. And I came up with this, I guess you can say, somewhat silly analogy. But bear with me for a moment. Type of dialogue, an imaginary dialogue between a refrigerator and electricity. And here's the dialogue. The refrigerator says to the electricity, tell me, where do you go to when they pull the plug? When the plug of the refrigerator is pulled, where do you, the electricity, go to? The electricity responds incredulously, what kind of chutzpah? What do you mean, where I go to? You're a little box that they just invented a century ago, 2 centuries ago. In some way, they generate me the electricity. They get it contained in this box called the refrigerator, and I refrigerate and cool food. And now you think you're the center of the universe. You're it, and you're asking me where I go. The whole question is based on a false premise. You think you're the center of existence, and you ask where I go. I go back where I always was before you were even created or invented. I go back to a place that's beyond time and space as you can understand it. You only see things through your little box. So it's not about finding an answer, it's like a whole different perspective. That's when we start learning about neshama. We hear right in the beginning of the Torah, what does it describe a human being? We don't say a human being is just a flesh and blood, an intelligent or emotional creature. Tselem Elokim, a divine image. God took a clump of earth, of clay, vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, and he imbued it. He breathed into it a life, a living life. That's why neshama, which means soul, comes from the same root as neshima, breath. It's God's breath, the living breath of God that makes the soul come alive. I should correct that the soul's life then gives life even to a lifeless piece of clay, of earth. And that's the human being. So why would one think that when that energy flow leaves the box, the electricity leaves the refrigerator, everything stops? Nothing stops. It's just not seen and experienced and felt on a sensory level by the box, in this case, the body. So it's our own myopic vision, it's our own narrow vision, that we only see the here and now. So the soul doesn't go anywhere. The soul is right here with us as we gather, especially when we're talking about a yahrzeit of a beautiful soul, is with us right now. We just don't relate to those dimensions. Just like you don't relate to your soul right now within you. Where is that soul? You think if you open somebody up, you'll find a soul in there, like a heart? Where is exactly the soul? We have to then relate to things that are a little more sublime, transcend time and space, and yet they occupy time and space. Here's not the place to go into how that works, the dynamics, but that's what Chassidus teaches. So it is somewhat of a connection of two opposites. The immortal soul connecting to a mortal body. And not just connecting, in a seamless fashion. But what does this teach us? What true life is really about. What true life is really about. And here's something that, first time you may hear it, it sounds almost like, oh, this is fantastical, but it's actually quite revolutionary. For us, we see death as part of reality. Everybody dies. Life, by definition, we age, we wither, we deteriorate, and I say we, I mean all of nature, everything in this world, and then finally it perishes. Material world doesn't have any substance that gives it anything eternal. It lasts as long as it lasts. And then death comes. However, if you look in the Torah, and you don't need to go into the deepest mystical teachings, you'll find something that's completely wrong. Death is actually an aberration from nature. Because here's the simple, obvious question. When you have gas in your car, at some point the gas runs out, you got to refill. When you have electricity flow, okay, it's a lot more than gas. If you're generating electricity from some source, you probably have more, but it also has limits. But a soul is a divine force, the breath of God. It never runs out of energy. So why should there be death in the first place? If the energy of the soul imbues the body, why should there be death? The soul's not running out of energy. Think of it like this, a cup of water. We're not considering the issue of evaporation. If the cup is intact and the water is in the cup, the water will never run out of the cup. Why would it? But there lies the answer. That's as long as the cup is intact. That's as long as the body is intact. If the machine called the body of life, the body of a human being, is intact, then the soul can continue giving it life forever. Problem is, what happens if the body gets punctured? And I don't mean physically necessary, physically as well, but also spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. What is an avera, a sin? We translate as sin. It's not the right translation. It actually creates a lot of misleading stereotypes. An avera comes from the word havara, displacement. It's moved. It's misaligned. If your machine, take any machine, is behaving in a way that is not functioning properly, what's going to happen? The machine begins to break down, and the energy that's within the machine will have no choice but to be removed. So it's not the problem on the energy level, on the neshama level, the problem is on the body level. When Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, ate from the tree of knowledge, they punctured the body. The body was no longer aligned with the soul's mission. That's why God comes into the Garden of Eden, as Alter Rebbe said famously to the minister when he was arrested, the story of Yutas Kislev, and he asked him, what means Ayeka? God says to Adam Harishon, who was hiding in the garden after the sin, Ayeka, where are you? Doesn't know where he is. God doesn't know where Adam is. So the Alter Rebbe ultimately answers, that's the immortal question asked to every human being. Where are you? I don't recognize you. It's like you're sitting near somebody and they space out. You know where they're physically, but you ask them, where are you? Where's your spirit? Where's your heart? Where's your presence? You're not present. I don't recognize the divine image in which you were created. Your behavior is not aligned with what your soul was sent for. Of the Lashamra, you've wandered away, you've betrayed yourself. And as a result, what does the Torah say? If you had not done that, you would have lived forever had you eaten from the tree of life and not from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But now that you have eaten from it, you have imposed upon yourself. Not as punishment, cause and effect. You have disconnected yourself from the source of life. So it'll last for a while, but it won't last forever. So in that context, death is an aberration. It's a result of misbehavior, of a misalignment. And therefore, when we say Tchias HaMesim, resurrection, everyone thinks, wow, that's like an unbelievable miracle. Says the Talmud, no. The Talmud says, if God could create something from nothing, he definitely can create something from something. Meaning, if something that didn't exist now comes into existence, he definitely can take something that existed, means life of the soul and body in this world, and resurrect it, because he's not doing something new. He's renewing something that was there. There was a book a number of years ago called, I believe, The Science of Resurrection. And they talk about DNA, which never dies. And hypothetically, it's still science fiction, but conceptually, many scientists will admit it's possible that you may be able to revive the DNA with the right tools and the right technologies and so on. Why? Because today we know that matter and energy are reversible. E equals mc squared from the good old Jew Einstein, which basically stated nothing dies. Nothing dies. It just changes form. The classic example, a simple example. Take water, liquid water. You freeze it, it becomes ice. You heat it, it becomes gas. Now, you may not see the gas, but you can bottle it and you can reverse this process many times. When you put wood in a fireplace and the wood is consumed and becomes fuel, it's turned into fire. And even when the fire burns out, the energy remains somewhere. May not be able to bottle it, you may not be able to contain it. Nothing can be destroyed because everything is either matter or energy. If matter is just another form of energy. And the Rebbe uses this analogy actually. So the soul contained a certain garment. That garment is the human body. And then it removes that garment and takes on another garment, a more sublime, a more subtle, a more spiritual garment. Now, of course, the more sublime and spiritual we are, the more we can relate to it. Famous story with the Rebbe Rashab. He was playing Rebbe Chassid with his brother Razor, Reb Zalman Adin. So they would always copy what your father. His father was the Rebbe. So Razor would play Chassid. Comes in one day to the Rebbe Rashab. They're both children. The Rebbe Rashab is dressed like a Rebbe. And Razor says to his brother, Rebbe Rashab, younger brother, Vos is Aid? What is a Jew? What is a person? And the Rebbe Rashab says, as a child, he says, person is fire. Aid is fire. So the Razor grabs the Rebbe Rashab's arm and says, if you're fire, why don't I get burned? And he answered, when fire touches fire, it doesn't get burned. When matter touches fire, it gets burned. When fire touches fire, it doesn't get burned. So it's really an understanding of different dimensions of reality. Now, this does not take away from the pain and the loss because we want it in this world. We don't want to just hear the soul is living on. We want them together. We want the cup and the water. We want the energy and the matter. That's why we say every day in davening, B'chayim Mesim. B'chayim Mesim sounds miraculous. You know what it is? It's actually not miraculous. That when you will fix the punctures, then there's no reason that the soul should have to ever leave the body. So actually, Tches HaMesim, which is just bringing back things to their natural order, soul and body forever. This is the science, the dynamics, if you wish, the Kabbalah, the Chassidus of eternal life. First time you hear it, it sounds, wow, that's interesting, but think about it. So I once shared this at a conference, a medical conference. What was I doing at a medical conference? I'm not a doctor. I'm not the son of a doctor. They asked me to speak about medicine of the future. So I shared this idea, and I said, the medicine of the future, once the body has become realigned with its purpose, with its soul's mission, with the divine mission for which it was created, there will be no more illness, and there will be no more disease, and no more death. Simply because they can work, and they seamlessly work together forever. I finished my talk. It was a longer talk. I gave a lot of the details I shared earlier. Fellow gets up, a doctor, one of the hosts. So what will happen with us doctors if no longer disease and illness and so on? And I could see it was like everybody laughed. So after the prerequisite joke that maybe that's why doctors take so much money for a long retirement, I said the following. I said, on the contrary, you will be doing something much greater than you're doing today. Instead of fighting the pain of disease, of illness, of all sorts, at that time, you will teach us the secrets, the divine secrets that are embedded in human physiology, in human biology, in chemistry, in every part of the body of human life. For my flesh I behold God. You see that godliness in the flesh in ways that the rest of us don't see. So you'll be teaching us divine secrets. Isn't that a far greater, far more pleasant job? And astronomers will teach us the secrets through the stars and astronomy and the celestial bodies. The reaction, I must tell you, was unbelievable. I'm not saying this about myself. Something resonated, a standing ovation. They related to it. And many of them were skeptics, and many of them were not necessarily believers. Because when you think about it, it resonates. It resonates. That life does not end when a person dies, God forbid. Everything lives on. Even on a matter level, matter lives on in energy. But definitely on the soul level. And yet, and I say this to all of you gathered, to all of us, to the Fink family, to Mrs. Fink, this doesn't take away from the pain. I remember when I sat Shiva for my father, you don't remember much what people tell you, but I remember one thing. I remember a person saying that the loss of a loved one, a father, a husband, is like a hole in your heart and soul. It doesn't go away. And you keep falling into it, especially in the beginning. As time passes, what happens is the hole doesn't disappear. You learn to walk around it. You can always revisit it, and we don't need much to revisit. You think about the loved one, the one you could touch, the one you could talk to. How could that not tear a heart open? But we learn to walk around it. That doesn't mean avoiding it. It means you learn that it teaches you something deeper about life and death. And we learn the secrets that God told Job when Job said to God, Eov, the suffering Eov said, why do you allow so much human suffering? And one of the answers that God gives him, which is unbelievable, he says to him, were you there when I created it all to ask me such a question? There wasn't a rejection. He was teaching a tremendous lesson. You asked me why there's death. Did you ask me why there's birth? You asked me why life ends. Did you ask me why it begins? No, we always ask when it's not working or it's not pleasant. We rarely ask why I was born. Yeah, we may ask it, but not with that same intensity and urgency. Because the secrets of death are connected to the secrets of birth, and the secrets of the end are connected to the secrets of the beginning. And as I said earlier about Kaddish, that ultimately the ultimate answer is not some rational answer, or you know what, we'll build something in the memory of this person. That's all beautiful. Ultimately, there is immortality in each one of us, and immortality does not die. And as us, the family, the children, friends, anyone, that takes it to heart and says, I will take that immortality and perpetuate it. The song, the melody continues to be played. And not only continues to be, it can be played even better and greater and wider and more expansive and with many new variations. That's the beauty of children. Every child has another part of that melody. Everyone expresses another part, not just of the genetic and hereditary features that we inherit from our parents, from our father, but also their spiritual legacy, which, as we've been hearing this evening, is tremendous. Rabbi Eliezer Gold was mentioning about the tzedakah of Shmuel, Rab Shmuel. Shmuel Yaakov, I should mention, because we're talking about Yaakov, Yechi Yaakov, Yaakov Lemes, Mazar B'chaim, Afu B'chaim. It brought to mind the following. When I repeated earlier the story with Rabbi Akiva and Kaddish, I intentionally did not tell all the details because I was speaking on the focus and I realized that was a mistake. I should have shared one more detail. What was the detail? Rabbi Akiva asked that man covered in charcoal black, that suffering man, the man who was collecting the wood and wasn't redeemed until his son said Kaddish. He asked him, what did you do in this world that you deserve such punishment? And he answered, I was a tax collector. And I favored the rich, and I persecuted the poor. In absolute contrast, Rab Shmuel, the Bala Yochid of today, was exact opposite. I'm not saying he persecuted the wealthy, I hope not. But he respected the poor, and poor doesn't just mean a poor person, it means needs. A person who loved to give tzedakah, There's his natural love. So you can imagine how much more so what Kaddish does for his neshama. And it's just an interesting thing. That's the thing that it says in the Medrash. Of all things, of all sins, that one. Now we can explain why that. Aren't there much worse things? But there's something about it. And it was his son that redeemed him. Now, thank God, we're not dealing with a person covered in charcoal and black. We're not dealing with a person who did anything of that nature. On quite the contrary. So the Kaddish, Yiskad Levi Yiskad Shmei Rabbah, which is about the exaltation and the hallowing of God's name, and how God will redeem us, Yatzmach Berkone V'Karev Mashiach, and all the other details of Kaddish for a man, for an neshama, like Rab Shmuel. That means it's elevating his neshama to higher and higher levels. As the Rebbe explains in the talk I mentioned earlier, I repeat it again because it's worthwhile looking at. This week's Parsha Shmois, Tov Shin Mem Tes, 31 years ago, talking about the end of Kaddish for the Rebbe Tzin Chaim Mushkin. And he says there, the same Kaddish we say, even on the most cruel, wicked person, we say also for a tzaddik. We're all the same Kaddish. Because it teaches us that everybody can be redeemed, but most importantly, that ultimately real Kaddish is not about just cleaning the dust. It's about elevation. It's about sanctifying and connecting the immortal neshama with the source of life, God himself. So, in the complete equation of things, when you think about it, V'achayit Nalibe tells us the lesson that we need to derive from all of this. The lesson we need to derive is one that is personal. Is personal. Each one of you, and I say this specifically to the Fink family, the beautiful Fink family. When I get back to New York, I'm going to make an effort to meet each one of you. You are carriers of eternity. What I hear about your father, and just the little we hear, is beyond words. You are the carriers of that. And you have the power to continue the song in an even greater way. Now some will say, greater? My father was so great. Greater means your unique way. We're not just here to gather and honor a neshama. That's not just what a yahrzeit is. It's about hachlotas tevis. It's about resolutions. Because one thing Jews always knew, it's not what happens today. It's what happens forever. When Avram said that, when Avram committed his life to family and children, as opposed to all the great leaders who did not have the time for family and children, he understood that it's not about that day, it's about forever and ever. And think about it. The promise made to Avram Avinu, that one day your children will be spread all over the world like the stars in heaven, was fulfilled. We are those stars. And those stars continue to shine. And despite everything we've gone through, and we've gone through much, the Jewish people, collectively and individually, and despite our many questions, and we have many, why God makes certain decisions, why he takes some people at one point in life, others at another point. And we all know the biggest question of all, things like the Holocaust. I shouldn't even say things, it's not the right word to say. We don't have answers, but we have the strength to forge ahead, and we will not be defined by our suffering and by our questions. We'll be defined by the legacies we build, and we perpetuate and we continue. And a time like this, yes, when there's a crack, that's how the light gets in. Times like this, when we're not in our comfort zone, when we're not just cruising along and everything is nice, and those are the times that usually we just take things for granted. At times like this, we look into the deeper truths of life. What does chayis really mean? What does life really mean? And the Rebbe showed us the path. That year, Tov Shemem Ches, entire year, study it. You'll be amazed of what kind of lessons we learn, what kind of power we can glean from it. This is what we have, and especially as Chassidim. We have the Torah, but we have Chassidus. What does Chassidus teach? About Divrei Lekim Chaim, the living words of God. That's what a mimer is. It teaches us what is Elokus, what is godliness, what is eternity. We live in a world where everything is mortal, Everything is temporary and impermanent. We learn what is eternity, and eternity is beating right now inside each one of us. And your dear husband and father, Rab Shmuel, is right here with all of us, feeling and experiencing everything we're experiencing, and partaking in our joys, as well as feeling the pain when we have pain. When people ask, does that soul have pain? Only when we have pain. Because the soul sees things in a bigger bird's eye view, sees the bigger picture. It wants to reunite with its loved ones, and it prays to do so. But it's not in pain, because it sees, even though we don't see. It's like we don't see behind the curtain, but that which is behind the curtain sees us. So think about it. The neshama of your father, the neshama of your husband is looking right now at all the friends gathered, at all of us gathered, wherever we may be, and smiling in some ways, and also hoping that we will do our part. We will do our part to embody, perpetuate. And the Rebbe made it very clear that this journey is not another marathon. We're already at the end of the marathon. Many legs that we've gone through, we're now at the end of the journey toward Mashiach, toward Geula, toward Chis HaMesim, when the world will be realigned to its initial purpose. Just a few weeks will be Yud Shvat. 70 years we're honoring and celebrating the Rebbe's leadership. And what was the Rebbe's message in the first mission statement he declared? That we are it, now it's all dependent on us. All that was done till now may be a lot greater, that we're like the midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants. The Rebbe didn't mention that there, but the idea. And it's dependent on us because we will take it to the finish line. We are the seventh generation, not necessarily with our choice, not through our work, not always was something we wanted, but we are that seventh generation. And we will bring, like when Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shekhinah back to earth, we will bring the Shekhinah back to earth this time in a permanent way. Because all the thousands, the tens of thousands, the millions, the billions, I can say, and perhaps trillions of mitzvahs, of good deeds, and sacrifices, and Mesiras Nefesh Mamish, that everybody gathered here has a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent. Somewhere you'll find someone that sacrificed their life, and perhaps much more than once. All that, what happened to all that? Where are all those good deeds? We know a mitzvah never dies. Good deeds don't die, sacrifices. So if you ask the doctor, if you ask the scientist, they'll tell you, hey, you know what, it's gone. People die, it's over with. The cynics say, they put on the tombstone, they say, here lies someone who thought he was indispensable, irreplaceable. That's not how we see it. There's no such thing. We see that everything they did was like a building block that's stored forever. The example Chassidus gives for it, like in a chest. Munach b'kufsa. It's placed in a chest, in a treasure chest. And it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates over the thousands of years. And then comes the moment when it's ready to erupt. And that's what the Rebbe says. We're at that stage. All that was done has accumulated. The building blocks are in place. We need that one tipping point, that one act, that one good deed. And that's why we're gathered here. Because that good deed is lying in the hands right now of us, family, friends of Rab Shmuel. This does not take away the responsibility from anyone else, but we have to look at ourselves, and that tipping point, with the absolute promise of the Nasi of our generation, that you do your part, it will happen. Open your eyes. What does open your eyes mean? We have physical eyes open, but as the Rebbe once said to someone, that by his Farbrengen, some people sleep with their eyes closed and some sleep with their eyes open. You can have your eyes open and not see anything. Anayim ve'elehem v'lo yiro. They have eyes, but they don't see. To see the soul, to see the divine, to see providence, to see the miracles, to see the extraordinary within the ordinary, and act upon it. And not buy into the skeptical attitude that the more things change, the more they stay the same. No, to be a pioneer, to defy the odds, to be a nonconformist, and say, yes, we can change things. And we've been promised in the Torah by all the greats, and we've seen that they did their part, and we're standing here today. And finally, the promise of the Rebbe, that we do this in the Deir HaShvi, we will finish the job. We'll finish the job. Now, we may have many questions. People have questions about this, about that. Questions go on forever. That should never take away from the action that needs to be done. When soldiers are on the front lines, they may have questions, but they cannot stop fighting the battle. And in this case, it's a spiritual battle, thank God. So Hashem should bless you all, Mrs. Fink, all the Fink children, extended family, all friends, all of us gathered here. You should have the strength, the fortitude, the vision to forge ahead and finish the job. Rab Shmuel is now, together with the greatest neshamas, watching us. One thing they cannot do that we can do is we have arms and legs. We can make and effectuate change in this material world. We do it with their strength, but we can do it. And though the inspiration of this evening, everyone goes back to their lives, I wish and pray that we can all hold on to this moment and bottle it and perpetuate it. Turn it into a force. Turn it into a movement. The people you speak to, your sphere of influence. Bring it home. Bring it to life. And the best way possible is to learn Chassidus and to implement and live it. Because it teaches us exactly what Mashiach is. The soul of things, not just the mechanics, the soul, the passion. God should bless you. You should be consoled. You should always have the strength. And I'm sure Rav Shmuel is giving you strength. And we should all learn from this, and finally finish the job. And we should be zeicha and merit. Now, even tonight, to the Geula Amitis Vashlema, when the world will be aligned, Basi Legani Achesi Kala. Doesn't say Legnuni, the Gani, not Legnuni. To the bridal chamber. Doesn't say Legan, to my garden, to the place where I was in the beginning. Iker Shechina B'Tachteni Mesa, the Shechina rested on this earth. And then it was concealed due to the misalignment. To the realignment, and we have now a Gani, the Shechina this time permanently, as the Rebbe says in the Maimer, Iker Shechina B'Tachtenim, permanently with the Geula Amitis Vashlema, and merit to see and reunite with the Rebbe Shmuel in a Neshama Beguf, with all the tzaddikim, with all the great people, and of course with the Rebbe leading the way. V'niske zenzach ben Rebbe and Dala Mata Masoret Tfochim. Begula Amitis Vashlema. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobson, for those beautiful words, inspiring words. I want to thank everybody tonight. There's plenty of food left. I want to make an announcement that the Heshi show, which is usually scheduled at this time on 620 Talkline Communications, will return next week on its regular time. And I want to thank Heshi Tischler for allowing us to broadcast this special program. And I want to thank everybody for joining in the song of Shmuel Yaakov ben Moshe Fink. We should all have a place in the song, and L'chaim Levracha. Right now, he's the only one in Crown Heights, but I see you in 770. Maybe we'll talk a little later about your background. Shkoyach, thank you. Hey.
Twice a day.
Yeah, Yes. Tonight's program honoring Shmuel Fink is finished, and we should all go and sing the song, as Rabbi Jacobson said, the song of Geula, the song of Mashiach, to align the world with peace and prosperity and divine purpose. Oh yeah, and don't forget to make a bracha achrona. If anybody washed, please make it, and come up and say L'chaim to the sons and the son-in-laws. And again, there's plenty of food left over, and enjoy it, and utilize the energy to do good deeds and be inspired by the life of Shmuel Fink. Oh, hey, did he do great? I guess he wish he spoke longer. I told him to do short. He's a good guy. We're a nice shot. No, he couldn't have done better. Yeah, you saw it's beautiful. All right, you're one of the few speakers I kept asking, maybe you should speak longer, right? He was interesting. It was good, Ari. Dr. Rosen, thanks for coming. Thanks for everything you do for everybody, Dr.
Dr. Rosen, I give you a blessing. You should go out of business. Nope.
That's what he said.
There's a shortage of ladies. I mean, in children. Amen. Checkups. Amen. No shortage. Amen. We're a business.
Now back to regular programming on WSNR 620. Thank you, Zev.
Did you hear what Simmons said? He spoke at a. Did you hear? He spoke at a doctors' convention, and he talked about aligning the world. There will be no more sickness on it. So one of the doctors got up and said, "So what are we going to do?" And he said, "Well, really, what you're going to do is you're going to teach how you know physiology and biology and That's beautiful. What did the Rebbe say?
Preventive medicine.
Huh? Because of special nights, this is out of Shmuel Yaakov Ben Moshe. Thank you.